Yeah, trying to get into my meeting. Um, oh, I'm sorry. What kind of sick? Jesus. Right, gotcha. Um,
Dude, you're awesome.
Talk to you afterwards. Yeah. Okay. Bye.
sorry,
Okay.
sorry. Let's see.
You stayed up too late last night partying, huh?
Yeah, that's it.
I heard that was you, Joe.
Well, it could be.
Okay, I think I've let everyone in. Sorry about the delay. Thank you very much for your patience.
You do a good job, Jody.
Oh, Houston, you're so good to me.
Okay, everybody's here? Well, let me look here.
Looks like it.
There's Denny, Deborah. Okay, and Caroline. Okay. Okay, 8:14. We'll open the Lake City Historic Preservation Commission meeting for March 2nd. Let's have a roll call.
Goodman,
Present.
I see you. Brennan,
Here.
Houston,
Here.
Lindsay, yes, Fox.
Here.
Okay. And let's see.
Okay, we have one set of minutes to approve. That's from our last meeting on February 9th. Are there any questions or corrections or anything like that on those minutes?
Looks fine to me.
Then let's have, we didn't deal with a whole lot at that meeting. Then let's have a motion for approval and a second.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay,
And
hold on.
a roll call vote.
Hold on. Sorry.
Everybody was at that meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Goodman,
Yes.
Houston,
Yes.
Lindsay, yes. Who am I missing?
Brennan, yes.
Yes, sorry,
That's
Denny.
okay. No problem.
Trying to follow my little thing. Lindsay, yes. Fox,
Yes.
all in favor. Motion passes. Okay.
Okay, great. It doesn't look like we have any of the COA applicants on the meeting today. So no public presentations. We don't have any communications. Are there any additions to the agenda that people would like to deal with in this meeting? Oh, God. I will just, under the old business, I guess I'll just say a few things with regard to the ordinance changes and bylaws changes that we need to be considering, and maybe we think about having a further workshop to deal with that, but we'll discuss that in the old business. Then we move on to action items. The first one for today is a continuation of the COA 2020-18, 329 Silver Street. The Bissell Lowry property. It's the Gem Creations, not the store, but what's now the residence. And I saw, I mean, it's a correction that we had to make in the minutes from the last meeting, because I had that listed as a contributing building before. It's not. Just so everybody's clear on that, it's not contributing mainly because of the board and batten that's been put over the whole thing, which was done in 1980. At any rate, to remind everybody, we've had some discussion over what kind of window is appropriate for the replacement of the broken window there. I've had some very interesting discussions with the Main Street architect and others with regard to what kind of thing is appropriate here. And a lot of back and forth on the original, that part of the building was added on to the original building in 1879, and you correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Grant, but that addition was put on in 1879, and it had a vertically oriented 6-division window in it at that time. In 1965, the addition, at least the front facade of the addition, was redone. And the configuration of the window and door were changed at that time to the way it looks now. And for a time, the Silver World Publishing was in that part of the building. Prior or post 1965. So there is a photo of that what you're looking at now, that configuration without the board and batten, with Silver World Publishing on it. But as I understand it at this point, and I've had discussions with the owner on this. I had some really nice discussions with Leo Joe Lowry about all this stuff. But they spent a fair amount of money in putting board and batten on all that in 1980. That was 2 years after the town created its historic district, and this was not one of the buildings that was listed in that first listing of historic buildings. But that change has removed the building from possibility of being contributing at the state and federal level. It could conceivably, like what's happened at the Lake City Cafe, for example, it could conceivably be returned and its status could be reevaluated, but not until the board and batten were taken off, as I understand it. But anyway, one can look at this. 1965, the change was made. That's over 50 years ago. You could go back and say it's not within the period of significance, but it's older than 50 years old. So there's some leeway in how you think about all this. But you'd have an argument for going back or keeping the configuration the way it is now and replacing it with a slider window, just like that's there. And if the owner were interested in it, one could consider to go way back to the original look and reframe that window and so on. There doesn't seem to be interest in that. But the final discussions I had with architects were interesting in that because this building has changed from a commercial use to a residential use, the appropriateness of what the actual request is in this COA to put in two double hung windows, kind of like what's in the second story of the main building there, which one could argue is more characteristic of residential buildings in the historic district in Lake City. That could be conceived of as appropriate, especially with it's non-contributing building at this point. So let's hear others' opinions or questions about how clear what I just said was.
Joe, if at some point in the future they did remove the exterior board and bat and went back to the clapboard siding,
Yeah.
would that window as a frame double hung fit in? Would that aid us if it was going to go back to being listed again?
If my understanding is something like this, if the owner or a new owner bought that building and wanted to return it and get it listed at the national or at the state or national level as contributing, they could remove all that board and batten, return the window and door configuration based on those old photographs that you have, and conceivably get it back to that kind of designation. That is possible. But from what I understand, you could not get a grant to pay for removing that and returning it. You'd have to do that yourself. And then if there were other things you wanted to do, once that was done, then you'd be eligible for tax credits and things like that. That's my understanding at this point. But that could be done. Again, we come up with our interest in possibly having Lake City be able to locally designate places. And if somebody were interested in taking off the board and batten, and even in that addition there where we're talking about the broken window, I believe there's clapboard under that board and batten, that if you exposed all that, then it, I'm guessing it could be eligible for local designation, and then eligible for tax credits and stuff, even with those 1965 changes to the building there. And the fact that there were, if you put in the double hung windows there now, if that were all to be done, then it would be kind of a fine line question of whether you kept those double hung windows or you went back to the what's the slider window, or you went back to the other thing.
Display window.
Display window. Any other questions? So it's my understanding that within this commission right now, arguments could be made to replace the slider window with a new slider window as it is now, or to agree with the current proposal to put in the double hung windows. I actually spoke with Leo Joe Larry last night, and she clearly hasn't had a lot of communication with Christian about what he's proposed there and so on, but she would be agreeable to either one, and kind of was agreeable to Christian understanding what would be best for that place. That's kind of the way she put it.
So here are my thoughts, that
Right.
yes, it would be at this point, more appropriate to replace the aluminum clad slider window. But as we have noted in other projects, the double hungs, although not historic in this instance, are more attractive and fit in better with the historic district for this age of a building. If this were a 60s and 1960s building, it would be different, but it's an older building. The double hungs do reflect an older style and frankly are just more attractive.
I'll just make a quick comment and then I hope somebody else also comes in with some opinions here on this, but attractiveness is kind of an adjective that we should not be using in all this. One person's attractive is not necessarily the same as another's, but the argument that it is consistent with historic buildings in the historic district of Lake City is a good argument. And the fact that it is now a residence rather than a commercial building and enhances that argument. Anybody else have a comment?
The double hung is the original request of the owner, correct?
Well, that's this COA that came in from Christian Hartman as a representative for the owner has that proposal. And my understanding is, I mean, he came up with that proposal because it was his idea that those looked more historic and they were a better representation of historicness in the district. So that's his rationale behind it. I mean, clearly we kind of came full circle, or I did, especially in discussing this with architects and so on, because I first thought that wouldn't be appropriate at all because that's kind of window was never in there. But the fact that it's changed use does seem to have an influence on how this gets looked at.
Also, while it's not authentic to the original paned windows, it's closer to it
That's true also.
aesthetically, and not to use the attractive, but it does match the other windows and the door better. And therefore,
Well, that was the owner's comment when I talked to her last night too. Yes.
yeah, if it's appropriate for us to approve those windows, I would be in favor of that for those reasons.
Danny, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I kind of agree with the ladies. Aesthetically, I think the double hung windows would be more, and I don't want to hate to use the word attractive, but it would be actually more fitting, more fitting for the era of the house, of the style of the house. Let's put it that way. And it would be more of our age of appropriateness. Is that how we put that? It would, I think, a double hung window would really flow a lot better than an aluminum window.
Joe, I'd concur. The outline and massing, the facade of this building is an 1870s style structure, not a 1960s. So I would think any changes would reflect the fact it's an 1870s style building and that window ought to at least be sensitive to that. So I would concur too.
Yeah, I mean, my only caveat would be having double hung windows in that particular space. They'll look a little bit different than the orientation of the ones up above, but and might look a little bit strange. But I'm of the opinion that that's probably a reasonable solution in this case. And if that's where people are going with it, then the only other issue is that in the proposal, let me see if I can read it here. The proposal says, if clad window is not allowed, we can use all wood, but homeowner would prefer clad windows for durability. So we need to state whether whether we require all wood windows in there or a wood clad window with probably be an aluminum clad window or something like that. And from what I understand, the outside of that would be aluminum, and it would be painted or colored brown to fit in with the rest of the look of the building. I asked Christian about whether it could be a wood grain look in it, but I think the easiest thing to get is something that just looks painted, and that's probably okay. And as far as I understand, that's essentially what's in the windows in the addition to the armory where we usually have our meetings.
Well,
Clad
historically,
is acceptable in this instance?
I think so. What were you going to say, Danny?
well, I was gonna say, just historically, appearance wise, the wood, I prefer the wood, but that's personal. I think with the other ones are wood, you can tell the difference between wood and metal. The addition over at the armory, that entire addition all had those type of windows, and that's a different, I understand what you're saying, but that's a different situation.
Okay.
This is a building facing the main street of our town. And to get
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah.
Good point, Denny.
to get the historical look that we're trying to, obtain, the wood would be better.
Well, then in our approval of this thing, if that's the case, then it would need to say that the replacement with all wood double hung windows or something like that.
Okay, I could struggle on a motion here. My motion would be that we approve per discussions with owners, the state, and the contractor to allow 2 wooden double hung windows to replace the current 1960s era metal sliders. Joe, help me on that.
Well, you don't need to say per discussions or anything like that, and we don't really want that kind of language in because we don't have a record of what those discussions are. The proposal is to replace with multi-pane double hung windows. And so we can just say to approve as proposed. And then what would with the condition that the windows are all wood or something like that.
Okay, Jody, did you
Give
get
that a try. As
So,
chair, I'm not really supposed to be making the motion, so I'd like
yeah,
somebody
we're working on it, Joe.
Okay.
So, isn't there a way to have a wood clad but not all wood window? Like it's wood on the exterior, but the rest of it is metal or vinyl or whatever is most appropriate. I don't really know that much about windows.
Well, I don't either, but my understanding is when you talk about wood clad windows, the wood is clad with something on the outside,
Oh,
and that's what's on the outside.
okay.
But I'm no expert on this at all.
I'm just wondering if instead of saying something like all wood windows, we say something about windows with wood exterior.
I think you can do that, Jody. My windows in my house are half wood, half clad.
And it's wood on the outside?
They're wood on the inside, though. It's the opposite.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that generally, when you say wood clad, it means on the part that faces the weather and so on, they're clad with some other more durable material.
Well, that's why I'm not using those words. I want to use the words with exterior wood or wood on the exterior like
Yeah,
that, and not
Yeah.
use the word clad.
Yeah, I think you're heading in the right direction, Jody.
Excuse me,
And
what,
the builders, they would know that.
Yeah,
what's the language used in the application? Can we scroll down again to that page?
Well, in this particular, it says if clad window is not allowed, we can use all wood, but homeowner would prefer clad windows for durability.
Well, why don't we approve the all wood
okay.
I agree.
as proposed by the owner?
I agree.
I do too.
Okay. To approve as proposed with condition that all wood windows be used.
Okay, I think that's okay.
Okay, who's making the motion?
I
I think Grant started out, so we'll give it to him.
Jody, could you read that back?
To approve as proposed with condition that all wood windows be used.
But just make sure you put in there to approve COA 20, I think it's 2020-18 or whatever it is. Have that
Yeah.
in the motion now.
Yeah. I lost my agenda. I had everything all set up yesterday with all the stuff we were gonna look at, and now I can't. Now it's not there. I'm
It's
just having-
2020-18.
Thank you.
And 329 Silver Street.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd make that motion, Jody.
Okay. To approve COA 2020-18 as proposed with condition that all wood windows be used.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Just discussion.
Yeah, any discussion on that? Okay, then let's put it to a roll call vote.
Goodman,
Yes.
Houston,
Yes.
Brennan,
Yes.
Lindsay. Yes, sorry, that's me. Fox,
Yes,
I got my order all out of order. All in favor. Okay. All right.
okay, that one is done. The second item up is COA 2020-20, 505 North Gunnison Avenue, Dan and Amy Humphrey's property, replacement of roofing on a contributing 1,900 residents. And I mean, as we've discussed, this is, well, there's no need to go into it too much detail here. The owner was reminded again that we require the additional information on that he's changing other things than just the roof. And we need a written statement indicating what that is. And we still have not received that.
Has he been given another reminder?
I talked to him on the phone last week and reminded him.
Out of curiosity, is he continuing the work in the meantime?
Pardon?
Out of curiosity, is he continuing the work in the meantime?
No, a stop order has been put on it.
Oh, okay.
And he can't really do it until all the snow's off the roof and so on. But, I mean, Caroline, are you still there? Caroline, can you hear us? I know she's muted. I can see that, but
Yeah.
okay, because I'd kind of like to get a opinion from the town manager on, I mean, it's a relatively small issue of what,
She has stated in the chat that she is tied up at the moment. She's probably on
okay.
a phone call.
Well, we can ask this question a little bit later when she comes back, but at this, I mean, we could go ahead and approve this, adding on that replacement of parts of the soffit and fascia with replacing wood with wood is also part of this, even though we have not gotten a statement from the owner that that's what he's doing. The other thing is that replacing the roof with the shingle roof with a metal roof may well cause this building to lose its contributing status. According to historic preservation officials, and that if we approve it, we probably need to have in the approval that the owner understands that historic status of the building and access to tax credits and grants may be jeopardized by this move. As we've discussed before, this is a policy that's been a policy in Lake City for 20 or 30 years to have these replacements take place. But according to the authorities in Denver, there can be consequences to that. And I can just tell you that, I mean, my view on this is in part because this has been done for virtually everybody else that had shingle roofs in Lake City. I think there's only one or two places left that have historic buildings that have shingle roofs, and only, well, maybe just one or two that have wood shingle roofs. But these are issues that other towns are dealing with. And one of the aspects that we need to consider in all this is the fire danger that Lake City sits in. And I mean, I've heard different opinions on this. Some people say that the metal roofs are clearly better in terms of preventing fire than any kind of shingles. Not everybody agrees completely with that. In some places, such as Fort Collins, they're having people put on these metal roofs that have stone surface, a stone type of surface that looks like shingles. But those are very expensive. And again, my long-term opinion on this is that if down the line such kinds of materials become more available at reasonable prices, that might be something that a town like Lake City could say that's what we want to do. But in the meantime, I don't really think we should force people to spend that kind of money on roofs, which need to be changed every so often anyway.
I agree with that. I think we should go ahead and approve the metal roof.
Joe, I came up with a picture that partially shows that roof in 1910, and it was wood shingle originally.
Well, a lot of these places had, yeah, wood shingle originally, and then some of them went to the asphalt shingle, and some went to metal and stuff, yeah. Well, Denny, are you suggesting that we just, I mean, how do we approach this? If we just approve the roof, I mean, we're kind of ignoring the fact that other historic aspects of that place are being changed without a request.
Well, yeah, that's a whole nother issue. I think if he's going to be doing multiple additions and changes, that should be addressed. I was just saying the roof itself, and if for no other reason for the fire safety that you mentioned, we should allow metal roofs in this valley.
Well, here's my comment on that. I don't see a definitive piece of information that says metal roofs are clearly better than treated asphalt shingles or other kinds of shingles. There's some disagreement on that, and clearly metal roofs without an undersurface of the sheetrock kind of stuff it may well be less good at preventing outside fires from getting in than well-treated shingles. If we were to say, okay, we're doing this because of fire danger, and somebody were to bring up the studies that show that the basis on which we're saying this isn't really true, then we have a problem. I would like to see the building inspector and the fire marshal make a statement about what's appropriate in Lake City.
Well, I think that would be a good idea to have their opinion, I guess more than opinion, their professional view of that.
Their professional view on it, and that might be something that the commission should ask for, yeah.
Yeah.
My issue with the COA is the continued defiance of the applicant to work with us. And I'm not sure that that's really appropriate of me to feel that way, but I don't know.
Well, that's exactly what I want to ask Caroline about. given that issue, what's the most appropriate way to deal with this at this point? And with that, maybe we just postpone this till we have a little discussion with Caroline, just,
There's Caroline now.
oh, okay.
Sorry, doing lots of things all at the same time this morning. I apologize, like many of you.
Yes,
So Joe, you're seeking clarity about how to address applicants that are not compliant. Is that the question?
well, Jody, you restate what you just said.
It's not so much that they're not compliant, but they're completely defiant of the process and refusing to work with us. We could have settled this issue a couple of months ago if he had just taken 5 minutes to provide us with information, which he still has not done. So we find ourselves like on the verge of approving a COA that we have delayed approving because for a lack of information, because we're tired of dealing with it. And I don't know. I don't like being forced into a corner like this.
Sure. Yeah, I certainly understand. I know that at least at the staff level, there have been lots of reach outs to try to work with, in this particular case, this applicant to try to assist with that challenge. But we have also not been successful at that. Yeah.
Any advice?
Not laughing at you, more just the frustration of that. Yeah, I don't think I have any public comment advice at this point. Perhaps that is some sort of revision within the ordinance, that helps that. I know, obviously in this case, right, the building inspector did issue a stop work order until appropriate permits and a COA were obtained and resolved. So I guess that is kind of right, the resource that we have, or the ability to be punitive to ensure some sort of compliance. But I would, obviously that's never my choice, right? I would much rather just be able to work with folks and have that happen. I know. But that is the ultimate alternative, I guess, if we have to use that. But I don't think this commission should feel forced into a situation to make a decision because they're not getting the communication they're requesting.
Possible that he's procrastinating because he's not working on it right now? He's waiting until spring?
I think that certainly would be a plausible rationalization for sure. That's probably not outside the realm of possibility. But I know that staff has reached out and that this applicant was aware that you all have continued to work through a process.
If I may, Caroline, on the issue of the metal roof, do you think it would help us if we had a written letter from the building inspector and fire marshal, actually a written document of appropriateness concerning metal roofs? Do you think that would help us in being able to make some of these decisions?
Denny, that's a really interesting question. I think that obviously from, so Bill Hagendorf, when he was the fire chief, did address this as well. And certainly it would have been his desire, right? Not necessarily for metal roofs, but his desire would be to have appropriate fire safe roofing materials, right? And those can come in other types of materials. It doesn't necessarily have to be a metal roof. But at this point, that absolutely is, the alternative, right? That is what we need to have for our community. But it doesn't lock us into a metal roof alternative.
So,
But-
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. But at the same time, right, there are really two different things that you're talking about. One is the historic nature of buildings in Lake City and the preservation thereof, and trying to keep them in a way that is true to their historic nature, and respects that, and working with owners to try to to make that happen. Right. The flip side is, life safety, fire safety, and building materials specifically. And those really need to work hand in hand together, I would say. They're not just they're not mutually exclusive. And so I don't think that puts either the building inspector or the fire marshal into a good position.
Well, I think that what we're looking for is not specifically metal roofs, although that would be our main concern, but some sort of not ranking, but some opinion on what the most safe roofs are compared to the least safe roofs. I understand like clay roofs are very fire resistant, but we don't really have any here in town, except for one house. But if we had something that we could point at, a professional opinion that we could point at and say, in a ranking of safety of roof materials, metal is this much higher than the asphalt shingles, say, which I don't really think they are. I think asphalt shingles are pretty safe, but that's just my opinion. I am not a professional. If we had a professional opinion, that would help support our approvals of metal roofs. It would just give us some standing for the decisions that we do make on a regular basis.
Well, that's exactly right. And my feeling is I don't think the commission should be saying we're going to approve this kind of roof because it's better in terms of fire protection. We're not experts in that. I don't think we can say that. And I just refer to, in the Saving Places Conference, hearing some of the discussion from people dealing with historic preservation in Fort Collins. The way they talked about it was, these are the same kind of issues they're dealing with there in terms of roofs on historic buildings and so on. But they referred to fire protection authorities in the town making statements about what kind of roofs were appropriate for the fire, to deal with the fire danger in the town. And the Historic Preservation Commission bases its decisions in part on what they hear from the other parts of the town.
Joe, I don't know if our fire marshal at this time would actually feel comfortable, in making that recommendation, or, with the existing fire board. I guess the town could reach out to the fire board and get on their agenda. And, I could certainly raise the question to them. I think that puts them in an interesting legal position as well. Because, roofing material has fire ratings. And
Right.
So I guess, what I would say is, if somebody, and this is somewhat off the cuff, right? But if somebody wants to put a particular roofing material on and they're saying this is what they want to do, and it is within the historic preservation's, considerations, then it really goes back to, the building inspector and the fire marshal, right, to approve the building material that they are requesting to put on their structure outside of this commission, right? So you guys are making the ruling on whether or not it's appropriate for the district. And then they make the determination on whether it's appropriate for the building codes and the fire codes that the town of Lake City and Hinsdale County have adopted.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with that, that is the function of the building inspector, and ours is the function of historic appropriateness, and that the precedent that has been set in the historic district of all the roofs being metal is really the factor here in my brain. How do we all of a sudden start saying no when it's yes for everybody else?
Yeah.
We ought to be able to come up with
Okay,
some
no, there,
alternative, Joe, that we could say, okay, yes, metal has been allowed in the past, but here's some alternatives that are even better, perhaps.
well, that's why it would be nice to have some professional opinion on what, yeah, what these fire ratings are and what kind of things are appropriate for Lake City. Yeah.
In this instance, though, isn't the metal roof already mostly installed? Like, he's not gonna care? In this-
No,
No,
he
there's
doesn't.
no,
No?
He's back, he's down to the bitchethane. So there is no roofing material actually on it, but he probably has it. I think I've seen it sitting in his yard, so I think he already owns it. It's just not.
he probably
installed.
already owns it. He's already said there's no way I'm putting shingles back on that roof.
Well, my suggestion is that we just continue it because we don't have what we asked for, and if he's procrastinating because it's not the time of year, then that's what's happening. But I don't want to set a precedent of approving applications that are incomplete.
Well, that's the other thing. We can go back to, I mean, when applications come in, and they have their first interaction with the subcommittee that we set up. The fact that he's doing things in addition to what he's asked for will come up, and we need to ask him to make sure that that's in the application also. That hasn't been done. He hasn't even signed the application. So given all that, it's easy to come to the decision based on what Deborah just said. Yeah.
So we could either just continue it by not having the motion, or we could flat out decline. Deny it, or whatever the word is.
That's right. We should probably go with the idea of trying to work with people as much as possible. And so we just delay it, just postpone it because we haven't had the information we require.
So do we need to make a proposal that we table this issue until?
No.
No.
As explained by Caroline last time, which I love this tool, if we don't make a motion, it just automatically carries over. And we don't have
Okay.
any of those time limits that would be put in place if we made some kind of motion.
Okay.
So I love this tool of just ignoring it.
Well,
and-
Caroline, is there a downside to keep doing that?
Only that it stays on your agenda.
Okay.
and y'all keep talking about it.
Yeah.
I'm good with
Okay,
that.
is there a motion? I'm not hearing any motion, so this stays on the agenda for the next meeting. Okay, just a few other things. It looks like the Saving Places Conference now has all of the sessions taped and available online. So you can go back and look at things that you missed that you might have want to see and so on. And if any of you didn't see the, well, I'm hearing echo here. The one on, what the standards mean to you. It was on the first day. That's a really interesting one. Or what, let me see if I can see it here.
Was that the first day or second day?
I think it's the first day. Let's see.
You're right, though. That's an excellent one. That's the one I was trying to tell you, Grant.
What do the standards mean to you? A debate on interpretation. That's one everybody should see, and I'm going to recommend that to the town trustees. And there's one other one. We'll put this in an email. I'll put it in an email to you. But there's another one with comments from what I was referring to today from Fort Collins and Aspen and somewhere else. I mean, they're all bigger towns dealing with a lot more money and a lot more rules than we have here. But it shows in a really interesting way how they discuss these things and what kind of language they use to talk about adhering to the Secretary of Interior standards and other kinds of things. And it provides a really interesting background. But I'll send out more information on that in an email to you, and then I'll send it to the town as recommendation for the trustees that signed up if they haven't fulfilled their number of sessions viewed. And I got to find out what History Colorado requires in terms of documentation of people having attended sessions and things like that. What else do we have here? Okay, you all, thank you all for getting back to me right away on those letters of support for Hinsdale County Historical Society. You got to read a little more carefully because I totally screwed up on one of those and left the wrong granting agency on there, and Grant and Glenn had to fix that. But thanks again. That worked fine in getting them some support letters. The last thing, which I mentioned a little earlier, is where we're going with the ordinance, potential changes to the ordinance and the bylaws. I guess I would put, if Caroline, are you here?
She had another call.
Yeah, I see. Okay. Well, I'll try to get her later. I have sent to her a copy of the proposed changes that were sent out to you. I don't know how long ago, but that copy of the ordinance with all the proposed changes in red. And I'd like to get some comments back from Caroline. Since our last meeting, it's gone to History Colorado for their comments. I haven't got any input back on that yet. But when we get some of these, we need to be moving forward to providing something to the town that they can take to the lawyer to talk about this. But we also want to have a workshop session with the town trustees to explain this. And I would like each of you to give me some feedback on, given the kind of presentation that I made at our last workshop, is that the kind of thing pretty much that we want to provide to the town trustees when we do it, or are there any tweaks or to that or additions that you think we should have in there as to our arguments as to why we want to do this. So
Yeah, I
anyway,
think that was a good explanation that you gave before to give them the overview, and we get in the minutia ourselves.
okay. Okay, one last thing dealing with the bylaws. And one of the things we have to deal with is seeing if people on this commission are interested in trying to have a system where we can administratively approve some COAs that come in so they don't have to wait close to a month sometimes to get acted on. And if we have relatively simple and straightforward applications, is there a way we can get those things approved? And early on in the life of this commission, we had suggested that the two-person subcommittees that get assigned to these things, if they conclude that the application that's come in fits this criteria, and maybe we need to say just fences that adhere to the guidelines, or maybe there's a couple of other things that would be appropriate. Then what we had suggested back then, that if that two-person subcommittee recommends that what be done, they contact the chair of the commission, and then the chair and the town manager sign off on that as an administrative approval. That was one of the changes that was made to the original bylaws that are still sitting there now, which talked about a consultant to do that, which is not the case. The other thing we might want to consider is that make a recommendation to the town that there be one town staff that has some responsibility for being able to make those kind of decisions. But now's not the time to discuss that. Do we want to, we don't have the feedback we want yet. Do we want to tentatively put a time for a workshop, assuming that we get some of this in by the second half of this month? Okay, well then let's see if we can wrap up this meeting. The third Tuesday in the month, you want to try that and have it at 5 p.m. like we did before?
Yeah, we could do that.
That's the 16th, Joe.
Well, then what, the 16th, 7 and 6 or 3rd? The 23rd maybe would make more sense?
I'm not available on the 23rd.
Okay. Well, is there a different day that week that you could be available?
Not really.
Okay.
Deborah, what were you saying?
Well, that's when I get my second shot, so I'm gonna be vomiting and in bed sick.
Oh, okay.
You're not,
No,
you're not gonna be
get
vomiting,
sick.
but you may not feel well.
That was a bit
The
graphic.
23rd is when you're going to be vomiting?
That's more info than I needed.
Yeah, really?
You might have a sore arm, but that'll be okay. That's all.
Well, you want to say the Thursday in that third week, the 18th?
I'm not available on Thursdays, I'm sorry, but the rest of you
Okay.
may.
Well, how about we say the 16th, assuming we get the information. If not, we'll just have to figure out another day.
That works for me.
Okay,
At 5 o'clock?
yes. Okay, with that, it's 9:16 a.m. and we'll close the regular meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Joe.
guys.
Go. See y'all.